Matthew, Alec, it's so nice to meet you. I'm really glad that Greg Banaszak reached out and he mentioned your name, and I've been listening to some of your music and stuff. It's so awesome. Thanks for being a guest on the Everything Saxophone Podcast.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Cool. So I want to talk about a whole bunch of things, but you know what? I'm going to kind of jump around all around the place. You've been voted Cleveland's best horn player in 2009, and I'm going to assume
I didn't get voted, but I was nominated as.
I apologize. I misread.
It does say that. No, it's all good. I just don't want to take any credit that's not due.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, I'm glad for the correction and everything. And
Sure.
I'm going to assume that's best horn player. That means trumpet, trombone, sax, the whole nine yards.
Yeah, that's Cleveland Scene magazine. I don't even know if they still do that. I think they still do their best of awards. I don't know. That's been some years though. That was the work I was doing with Winslow at the time. There was a band called Winslow that is now defunct, and I was friends with all those guys. It was a great funk band, funk pop, but that's been some years, and that band was really popular in the area during that time. So that's really what was the main impetus behind that.
Well, I think Cleveland and the Cleveland area is going to be a big theme for today because you have a lot of ties to Cleveland. Were you born there?
Yeah, I was born in Richfield, which is much smaller, a bit more rural, middle-class town that's about a half hour south of Cleveland. It's almost, if you draw a pinpoint on the map between Akron and Cleveland, you'll find Richfield. It's right there. So,
got it. Okay, so then let me ask you this question. I love to ask this too. I'll go here. When did you start getting involved with music? I don't necessarily mean saxophone because a lot of our guests hadn't started on saxophone, but when did you first get involved with music? And then, when did you get involved with saxophone?
Yeah, so maybe I'm the opposite of some of your guests, but the funny thing for me is I was involved with the saxophone long before I was involved in music. So I started playing the saxophone in fifth grade. And I was not involved in music at that time. The saxophone was a device that I touched occasionally and had to for my school, but I didn't know anything about music. So my love for music came in high school, which I'd already been playing the saxophone for probably about 5 years at that point. So first it started with classic rock, probably like I want to say like freshman, sophomore year. And I wanted to be a guitar player, but that didn't happen. But I did get to be there. I kind of owe my love to jazz to a friend of mine. He was a freshman when I was a junior. His name was Chris. Real cool dude. I haven't really stayed in touch with him much, but he was an advanced saxophone player as a freshman, and he kicked my butt in our high school auditions. And I was a chair behind him, and he knew all about Charlie Parker. He came with the beautiful yellow omnibook. And by the way, I got Charlie Parker right behind me here. But,
yes, you do.
Yeah, but so I had no idea, never heard Charlie Parker. I didn't know anything about jazz. And so I was coming from this classic rock area at the time, listening to Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles. And he started playing. He's like, you got to hear this. You got to hear this. And I listened to it and I was like, whoa, what is this music, right? So it blew me away and it changed my life. So just from that moment on. And he moved on and moved out of my life, but that stuck. And then I went to Kent State and I met Greg, and then everything changed. So,
your background is probably not much different than most people when you think about it. Most people, and actually even a lot of people don't even get instruction in school on an instrument. But for those people that do in the States, they'll start off on an instrument, they'll go through the method books, right? Breeze Easy, Rubank, all that kind of thing, right? Playing. Yep, playing all the.
Yep.
Yeah.
Class A. We did Class A. Oh yeah, my favorite books. Yep.
That's actually good that you even did that. I mean, a lot of schools don't even get that far.
Sure. Well, that was. Oh no, I didn't do that in high school. That was thanks to Greg. I did Class A. But,
Oh, got it. Okay, yeah. So then this sounds very typical, compared to I think most people for the most part. But what's interesting to me, what was the scene And again, you may not know because you were in high school, but what was the music
Mm-hmm.
scene kind of like? Was it more rock based? Like were more people into rock music, and that's why you were into that at that time?
You know what? I have no idea about the scene. I was in my own little world. I was kind of independent kid as a high schooler. I don't know. I wasn't a cool kid. So I just kind of did my own thing. And I don't even remember what got me into that music, by the way. I don't remember. Maybe some friends in school, maybe. Um, and classic rock really just stuck to me. And the funny thing is, I don't listen to classic rock hardly at all anymore. But
That's fine.
yeah, but it's just a natural progression of things. I know I can tell you, like getting into college, I got into the scene a lot more, and yeah, I think rock was definitely. It still is. I mean, rock is sort of, when it comes to the music community in Cleveland, I think that rock is sort of the heart of that. I'm in a Foreigner tribute band now, and I can tell you there's a huge market here for rock bands, especially good like tribute kind of bands, which I don't even really like that much, to be honest. But it's I like it's a good band. I like the guys in it, and it's it can be a good paycheck. So not complaining.
Oh, for sure. And I've got to ask. So, do you play the solo for Urgent?
Oh yeah. So we do. If there's any Foreigner fans out there or Junior Walker fans, the they do there's a YouTube version out there where they do like an extended solo version, and Tom Gimbel is their saxophone player who's since retired. I think he's older cat now, and actually Foreigner is about ready to hang up their cleats altogether.
That's so sad.
But I think I know. So this was like 2002, I think, that the YouTube video is out there. But it's they do an extended Mick Jones guitar solo at the very beginning, and then they do like a long version of Urgent. And Tom Gimbel, who's like a multi-instrumentalist, but he's a great rock sax player, and he does the whole basically his version of the Junior Walker solo like it is on the record, and then they take it up a whole step, and then they do I think it's a step, and then it's his own solo that's just like squealing after that, and that's what we do. So it's kind of cool, but it's a big feature for me. There's not a ton of saxophone on their stuff, but the stuff that's out there is big, so I get my big moments on stage with them, which is kind of cool.
Iconic. Now, what are you doing when you're not playing saxophone? Do you play any other instruments?
For them, I play keyboard. To say that I'm amazing would be an overstatement, but I'm okay. If I played keyboard all the time, I would be good at it. But it's not my main focus. I write songs on piano quite a bit, so I know chords very well. But to do like flashy parts, oh boy, reading piano music is like one note. I forgot what I was playing. I got to start all over again. I'm better if I just listen and I play, or if you give me a chord chart, I'm good. But yeah, reading is those whole multiple notes at a time. I don't know. It's not way saxophone works. So
yeah, me too. That sounds like me on piano. It's like a hack job for sure. But,
yeah, sure. Yep.
You know what's interesting, and I'm gonna go down this route for a second. A lot of people that listen to this podcast also play in cover bands, and some do play in tribute bands.
Sure.
What's your take, or how do you feel about when you're playing, especially in tribute bands? You have to play, or maybe you don't. Do you find yourself playing the iconic solos note for note? When you're playing with certain tribute bands, and does that get boring really quick, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the Foreigner guys were absolutely adamant that I play note for note.
Okay.
And which I was okay with, especially they start the set with Long, Long Way From Home, which has another Ian McDonald saxophone solo on it, which is just short, but it's a good solo. And it's kind of weird because the phrases are in threes at the end of the solo, just counts to three, which is kind of weird, but it's a neat solo. It's a good solo. And in any event, that almost has to be note for note, Urgent, I think the way we do it, where the first part of it is note for note, like the solo and the big squeals on those two big altissimo notes, that's I think that's important. And then you put your own spin on it. I do think if you listen to, if you, anybody out there watching, if you are a Foreigner fan, check out that live version with Tom Gimbel playing, because I think he does it the way a tribute band should do it. To answer your question, he does it like the original, pretty much note for note, but he puts his own thing on it. And he does some different accentuations and plays with a couple things that aren't on the original recording, because he's not Junior Walker, he's Tom Gimbel. So, I think that's the right way to do it, to answer your question.
Yeah, because you want to put your own character into it. It's tricky. I think it may be harder for the guitar players. Like, I think about, I love the group Journey, right? And those guitar solos by Neil Schon are iconic.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
I think people, are expecting those.
For sure. Yeah, and especially a good tribute band. Yeah, for sure. Agreed.
Yeah, but and on the same token, I've been in a lot of cover bands, and you're doing the same thing over and over again. It's almost like, not exactly like, it's almost like being in a Broadway pit playing the same book for years, and it's 7 or 9 shows a week, same thing over and over and over again. You almost can stagnate if you're not doing other projects.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Luckily for me, I think the answer to that is to have other projects. but yeah, for sure. I mean, I just bring it back to Foreigner, since I've watched so much of their stuff now over the last year, and I have they are in a sense a tribute band themselves at this point, because there's pretty much no original members. And Lou Graham, their singer, is long gone. They've had what's his name, the newer guy who's been there for like a few decades now, and they've had a handful of different saxophone players and whatnot. Mick Jones is their only lone original member, and he's retired too, pretty much. So I think they are a good example of what you should do, because they are a tribute to the original band in a lot of ways, and that's what they do. They just kind of play with what was the original version, to try to keep it fresh a little bit, so.
That's really a great statement when you think about it. It really didn't occur to me, with a lot of these older bands. Yeah. I mean, not a lot of the original members are in them anymore, so they are like their own tribute bands.
The Temptations are still touring somewhere. We know they're not. None of the David Ruffin is not there anymore. So, just saying.
Yeah. No, that's a great take on that. And I have to ask. So for the high squealing notes, those really high I think it's altissimo, F sharp and G sharp. Do you have any tips for our readers with regard to those?
Oh yeah, I do. Actually, one funny story, and then I'll answer the question. The funny story is that the band that I'm in, they formed. So it's sort of some old Cleveland rockers in the band. I'm the young person in the band, and they've been in the Cleveland rock circuit for a long time. The one guy I played with, Michael Stanley, there at the end, if you're familiar, he's a sort of Cleveland rock legend. And then, well, whatever, it doesn't matter. In any event, they wanted to form like a Cleveland rock supergroup in a way. And they had all these Zoom meetings before we could even get together, because it was in the middle of the pandemic and nobody wanted to be in a room together. So nobody told me that they were going to change the key. So so I learned the solo note for note in what is F sharp on tenor saxophone. And then we get to the first day that we're there, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's in." We dropped it a half step, which I did it. It was okay, but and the funny thing is, I think it's a little bit easier as far as those notes are concerned on the original key than it is dropping it a half step, just a little bit. Not to say you would think a half step down, you're like, oh, easier. It doesn't really sit the same. So no, I don't think that it is. But when I joined the band, my top altissimo note was F, which is a step and a half below what Junior Walker plays. And because whoever plays up there, right? I mean, like I do sometimes, even like I listen to Michael Brecker all the time, and he doesn't play up there hardly ever. I mean, maybe never. Maybe a one solo, but but I knew I could. It was just a matter of sitting in the practice room and doing it. So I did, and I sat for. Now we're getting to the actual answer to the question. So I sat in the practice room, and first I tried to figure out what fingerings would work for that. I'm like, and I eventually settled on some things, and long tones. So long tones first in half steps up to each note for 8 counts, 4 counts, 8 counts, 4 counts with the metronome, just sitting there doing it. And then triads, major triads up to those notes. So, and that was pretty successful. And now I've extended way up there. I think I'm another 6 or 7 pitches up above that now.
Wow.
So, and I could probably just keep going. It's like a trumpet. So F sharp's different. And I think I found a YouTube video that showed me that. F sharp, what I was trying to do was take, your 2 front guys and put your side guy here, like you're doing, like, just because I have a Mark 6, it doesn't have a F sharp. Okay. Yeah. So I just your standard front split, like altissimo F sharp. What I was trying to do was use that and put it up another octave. It's a trumpet, it should work, right? It actually kind of does, and you can make it work, but it's a hell of a lot harder.
Yeah.
I don't have my saxophone with me. I'm trying to think. So F sharp is like this guy or something. I know finger shapes. My mind just does it, right? So it's like this. I think I got
131. Okay,
something like that. That's like, that's a more solid F sharp, and it works. Interestingly enough, G. So the note above that, G. I actually use an altissimo A for that. I don't know if that's right or not, but it works. So when I go for F sharp, and then I use that for G.
You just use 2-3. You don't use your right hand 1-2-3.
No, I don't know. Is that what I should do? I could try that. I could try to, but I just use that, and it works like butter. It's easy for me. I don't.
How interesting.
And then G sharp, I do like a standard altissimo G sharp, like that, with your 2 guys and this guy, and it'll play up the octave, no problem. It can be a little squirrely sometimes, but I mean, anytime you're up there, it can be a little squirrely. Those are high notes. So, and then the A like this will work again. So G, F, A will work again. B flat works, B works, C sharp works, D, 2 octaves up, it'll do it. It's just all this. So I don't know. And I don't know if that's, I'm sure there's people out there, or Lenny Pickett could probably show you much better fingerings, but for me, I just approached it like a trumpet. So I was like, well, this should theoretically work. It works for the octave down, so it must work for the octave up. And it does. So, I mean, you could play up there pretty consistently and reliably just by using the same fingerings as the ones octave down. So
yeah,
if that makes any sense.
No, it does. I play trumpet also, and it has to do with overtones and harmonics and all that kind of thing. And excuse me, when we get into the really high ranges, like, so C is open on a trumpet, and then you have all the pitches that you can make: C, E, G, and then as you get higher, you can get B flat, then you can get a D, and then you can get like an E again, F sharp. It's kind of crazy up there. But, you have to definitely hear what you're doing before you do it. You try to do it because it'll just be, just a hot mess. But what was interesting too, though, it also, to me, depends on the brand of horn that you have and whether or not you've got that high F sharp key. Like I have a Mark 6, although I'm playing a Trevor James right now, which I love. But the Mark 6.
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, man, those are really good horns.
Are they? Cool.
Yeah, I had the Signature Custom Raw, really good. It's so powerful, but
cool.
Yeah, but the Mark 6, I never had the extra F sharp key, so I still don't use that. It's bizarre to me. I don't want to, but it does open up options for you, but I do think that, there's differences with the horn brands. I've seen that. And also whether you have that extra F sharp altissimo key,
Hmm.
as well. That's really important there. And yeah, I like that idea of approach like a trumpet, in the sense of thinking about harmonics and stuff like that. And you even said it before too, you're approaching it, by also doing arpeggios up, chords up
Hmm.
to get to the
Yeah.
note. I think if I
Yeah,
remember
you
right,
have to with urgent, because if you don't, you got to make two big leaps in that solo, and that's the most challenging thing is getting it right off the leap, and then in time and right off that leap. It's challenging. I don't always hit it. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I got to take a second. It's I try to explain this to the guitarist sometimes. It's like, this is not a regular note for the saxophone,
yeah, definitely,
but
definitely
mostly
not.
comes out. Yeah, but you gotta sometimes you gotta muscle it up. It's so dependent on a reed too. The reeds. Ooh, yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
know what? Let's do this for a second because I know people are going to be curious. What's
Hmm.
your setup? We know you have the Mark 6. So what else
Yeah.
do you use?
Um, and I, the Mark Six I've only been playing for about 2 years now. Still have a
Oh,
King Super 20 that I
huh.
recorded the album on. The studio album is on the King Super 20, which that's when I started learning all the altissimo stuff on. I had that for about 10 years. And I still have it. That's a great horn. I'm not sure. I think I like the Selmer better. It depends on the day. The key work is much better on the Selmer, but
Okay.
the sound on the King is, oof, it's just, the walls just come down with that thing, which is
Ah, that's always
nice.
good. That's always cool.
Yeah, it's got that huge sound. But yeah, I'm playing a Van Doren piece, and which also is not what I recorded the album on. I'm playing a Van Doren T75 or T77 metal piece, which I
Okay.
forget they do a tip facing two on that. I forget what it is, but I like. So I recorded the album on a Dave Gardella MB2, the Michael Brecker copy piece,
Okay.
um, and I didn't. I like that piece. My complaint, and the reason I stopped playing on it, was because if you're familiar with those at all, they have like the Gardella pieces have like a little plastic tip thing and it started to like pop out. And I'm hard on my mouthpieces. This has to be like super super strong, so like I'm really hard on my pieces, and that thing started like popping out and cracking and stuff, and I just got tired of it, so I stopped
Wow.
using that. The Van Doren piece is just solid metal. There's none of that, so I don't have to worry about it. And then the other thing I like about the Van Doren piece is I have the optimum ligature,
Okay.
and the cap fit over the piece and onto that ligature is so tight and so nice that I don't have to worry. I used to have to take, because between set, you're playing a 3 hour set, and which I hate. I like hour and a half, 2 hours are perfect to me. But when you got those 3 4 hour shows,
Yeah,
between, you
that's hard.
take 20 minute, sometimes even a half-hour break sometimes, your reed's going to dry out unless you take it off of which is a pain, and you're going, I mean, going getting a beer or whatever between sets. And so I don't have to do that anymore. I can just put the cap right on there and leave it on, and it won't dry out. Even 20 25 minutes, it won't dry out. So, and the minute your reed dries out, you're toast. So you might as well just get a new reed. Can't let
Yeah.
that thing dry out.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I mean, I use Leger, but
Yeah.
one thing that I've always recommended to people that use cane reeds is, and this is not going to
Hmm.
help you necessarily on the stage, maybe it will, but
Sure.
rejuvenate. Rejuvenate
Hmm.
is a great holder. It can hold three reeds, tenor or alto, whatever,
Hmm.
and
That's
you
cool.
put original Listerine in there, original
Hmm.
Listerine, not the colored stuff, and it
Yeah.
keeps your reeds like in one state all the time. So
Yeah.
they're not like
Yeah.
soaked, but they're moist. So you pull it out, boom, you could play.
I was just going to recommend that. So I have a funny story on that one too. I keep mine in a humidor
Oh, okay.
when it's traveling with me. So I have a little portable humidor thing that fits about 15 reeds across. It's like the perfect little shape. I don't have it with me, or else I'd show everybody. But and it's got a little sponge thing that you drop a solution on, and it keeps the air. But when I'm home and I usually rotate maybe like two reeds for Now that I started doing this, I literally can have reeds that just last for weeks and weeks and weeks. They do eventually kind of get a little icky, but I have a funny story there. I sit at home, I keep them in a container with Listerine, like you said, and it keeps them pretty much perfect for a long time. But the funny story is Bob Franceschini. Are you familiar with him? Yeah. He's goes way back with Breckers and Mike Stern, and he still plays with Mike Stern and Victor Wooten quite a bit. So he's a great saxophone player. But I was at a clinic with him some years ago, and he brings this thing out, and he shows everybody this contraption he has filled with Listerine, and he's like, he pulls out this reed. He's like, this reed is 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he comes out and he plays it. And he's like, it's still perfect. And I think it's hysterical. I would never play a reed for 10 years. You wouldn't pay me for play a reed for 10 years. But the fact of the matter is it worked, and he's right. And I only recently took up his advice. I just a few months ago started using Listerine, and it really does work. So
yeah. You know what's interesting was his contraption. Okay, so many years ago, from the best saxophone website ever, which those guys are so awesome. There was a bonus video that I got. I purchased a product, and Ricky Sweum, who's from Colorado, made up this contraption. It's this, and I don't have it. I've got it in the other room, but it's a Witz container, which is like supposedly waterproof container. It's about, well, my hand's pretty small, but it's about the size of my hand, maybe a little bit bigger. You could put a 4-reed case in there. Case that holds 4 reeds. And then you fill it up with Listerine, original Listerine, and you just leave it in there, and it's good to go. So I wonder if Bob's thing was something like that, where he pulled it out. Because Ricky said the same thing. He had a reed for 5 years.
He had a pretty funny contraption. So he had this, I don't know what it was. It was this little blue, it was like a blue plastic thing that clamped together that was about the length, a little taller than a reed. And he had rubber bands around it.
I understand why.
Yeah. So
it doesn't
was
leak.
Pretty funny. So it doesn't leak. So I did think it was kind of funny. He's a funny guy. He really is. He's a funny. I mean, very serious, but funny. He has a funny way about him. But yeah, I got a kick out of his little container. Cool.
People don't realize, and some people be like, "Oh no, the reeds get waterlogged." No, they don't actually.
No, they don't. Yeah,
it's the research that John Mackey, who created Reed Juvenate, which is a much easier way to carry these reeds around. He did extensive research, and they found that when the reeds were kept in one state all the time, wet, they lasted longer and longer, and they were also they were free of germs, and that's especially now with good now with COVID and stuff like that. But that totally changed my thought process. I mean, Ricky Sweum's interview changed my mind, but then John Mackey's research just did the trick for sure. But which reeds do you use? We didn't get a chance to find that out.
Van Doren Java, number 4.
Is it the red or green?
Green.
Oh, the green.
I like the red box. I've tried the red box. I don't care for them. They're huskier kind of, but I don't know. They don't have the same I don't know. I can play them, but I don't care for them as much.
I hear you. Yeah. So, so this is really cool. So now we've got your setup. So, people sometimes think that, you need a certain type of mouthpiece, a certain type of reed to get altissimo, but that's not really what it is.
No, you know what? I am not a gear guy. I don't I'm not saying that you shouldn't try other things, or even if you have if you go to a music store and you have a selection of mouthpieces, and try a few and pick the one that you think works best in that moment. Sure, that's fine, but then stick with it. Stick with it for a while. Play it for a long time until you won't know if you like it or not for at least a few weeks, probably. So I would, I don't know. And then once I have one that it works, I'm good for, I don't know, forever. I don't need to. The times I've changed, it's because something's happened or I've lost it or something. I don't change much unless there's something that's really bothering me. But nah. Yeah, it's all on the embouchure. Everything else is, as long as it's a well-made mouthpiece, you're good. I mean, maybe you want something that's a little louder. Okay, you could try a different chamber, a different tip opening or whatnot. But
Yeah, it's funny. So many of the people that I've interviewed are the same exact way that you're talking
yeah.
about. Where they find something that they like and they stick with it. They don't change.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking about this analogy too. You buy a car, you buy the car that's best for you at that time, but you don't change well, unless you're leasing, but you don't change cars every year or 3 years. Like I've got my Toyota and it's going on, well, it's definitely 10 years. Yeah, it's more than 10 years at this point, and it's,
Yeah.
while there's some things that irritate me to no end, I still make the car work and I love the car, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. So then now let's get back to, I'm curious about one thing. You mentioned how that one friend, Chris, totally changed you, changed your musical life, introducing Charlie Parker, to you. When did you know that you wanted to major in music? Because it appears that you probably weren't thinking that before this guy, pops into the band and as you say, kicks your butt and all this kind of thing, whatever.
I wasn't thinking it even when I was in college, to be honest.
Okay.
I was a meandering child. I was not a hard worker. I'm a much harder working adult than I was as a child. So I went to Kent, and it's Kent State. It's here in Ohio. And for you people out there, we were famous probably for the Kent State shootings back during Vietnam. So, yeah, sad. It's a good school though. But I went there. I got accepted. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I had. I knew I wanted to be involved in the music program for sure. I knew that. And I did audition for their music school right away. And I did, and I got in. But I was officially labeled as a minor at Kent State for the first year. And it actually set me back too, because I wound up being at Kent for 5 years instead of 4 because of that. Because I didn't take the level 1 courses I need that first year. But whatever, it all worked out. But yeah, I didn't, it was probably about a year in before I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do this. So yeah.
Cool. So then, was it during that first year that, well, I'm curious, as a minor, did you have the opportunity to study with teachers? And was that where you met Greg Banaszak?
It is, yeah. I was already taking saxophone, I forget what they called it, whatever the saxophone course was, with Greg that first year. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And were you now, and the reason why I'm kind of harping on this too, and I'm doing this for a reason, because a lot of people, I'm going off of people's limiting beliefs. And one of the limiting beliefs, I mentioned it already, you need a certain type of mouthpiece, reed combination, horn combination to play altissimo. Another limiting belief is that only a few people can play altissimo. But another one is also that, I should have studied music and stuck with it when I was in grade school or elementary school in order to, to quote unquote, make it, so to speak, or, have any kind of career. But what you're so far as a mini recap, what you're showing is that you were just an everyday kid, just, going through life and enjoying life and all this kind of thing. And you played the saxophone and you started to pique your interest a little bit more in high school. And it was in high school where you started to get, introduced to Charlie Parker. But you still weren't sure about music. And then you go to college, and then it took about a year and you're like, yeah, you know what? This is what I want to do. I think that's inspiring because a lot of people feel that, you have to be this prodigy in order to be successful, And the thing is that what you had said before, you're a much harder working adult than you were, when you were younger. And I think that's true for a lot of people, especially, I know a lot of my friends who were, maybe not in the advanced classes in high school, but they found their passion and they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're traders on Wall Street. They're doing incredibly well, because they found something that they were passionate about. And I think that's the same case with you, where you found that, and it's perfectly fine to find that later. It's not even that much later, but later on in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I read a quote that is apropos here. So Facebook Facebook quote. We get all our news from Facebook anymore, right? Isn't that where you get your news? So yeah, I'm probably dating myself now too. Facebook, who uses that?
Oh, I do.
Yeah, I know, I do too. But Bobby Selvaggio, who's another great saxophone player here in Northeast Ohio, he is the jazz band director also at Kent State now. He was not when I was there. He's about a decade older than me, I think. But he studied at the New School out in New York City, and then he moved back to Northeast Ohio. He's not a friend of mine. He's a colleague. I know him, but I don't know him super well, if that makes sense. But he posted something that I found to be very interesting, and I can't agree more. He said that you're going to be, I'm paraphrasing, but he said you're only going to be as good as you envision yourself to be. So if you limit yourself, then that's as far as you're ever going to go. You can't limit yourself. You have to open whatever you envision for yourself. You have to get up and do it. That's it. Like there's no rules. So I don't know. So I never put any limits on myself, and that's why I'm still going. So.
And I was going to ask you, even though you probably recently saw that quote, I guess reflecting back on your life, right? You feel like you followed that.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish that I'd had an earlier start. I wish that I'd had. I write for here and there. I'm a supplemental writer for All About Jazz, and I did an interview with Joe Lovano this past summer. I was at he has a house still in East Lake. He's from Cleveland. He lives in New York City, but he still has a family home right outside Cleveland. And he was in town for Tri-City Jazz Fest. So I spent like 3 hours at his house with a video crew. And that's not out yet. It'll be out fairly soon. I submitted the transcript to All About Jazz just a few days ago. But awesome. Yeah, and then there'll be a video interview out too, which is great. It's 3 hours or 2 hours. And his house was so hot. Oh man, it was hot. It had no air conditioning. It was middle of summer. It was like, and we were just sweating. But it was a great interview. Yeah, it was a great interview. But he talks about his family and how his dad was a famous saxophone player. His uncle was a saxophone player. His other uncle was a trumpet. His mom was a jazz enthusiast. This is his background. And then their family were Italian musicians. So, wow, talk about the perfect upbringing. He had the perfect storm. And look what he turned out to be, one of the creme de la creme performers, So we're not all going to get that type of background. I wish that I did. I wish that my mom was like that, and I wish that my brother was like that, but they weren't. So you have to take what what you're given. But and I don't think that should be limiting to anyone. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so glad you shared that quote. And I'm going to ask you to send me that link when that comes out, because I think people are going to be very interested in that interview, reading it and also seeing the video as well.
Yeah, the written transcript, it's been edited down. It took me weeks to do this thing, and I'm really busy. So, here I am with what was, I uploaded the unedited video interview onto YouTube unlisted, and it gives you I don't know if you're familiar when you put it up, but it'll give you a transcript of what it hears. And I take that and I copy it and I put it into a Word document. It was like 50 some pages. Wow. So, yeah. So, and there's all these, it's, not grammatically correct. Nothing's punctuated. It's not at all formatted. And it's got all the ums and buts and likes and all the stuff that All About Jazz does not want to publish. So you have to go through that, and it's a long process to get it into something that people want to read. So the written transcript will be stylized and fixed and pretty for readers, but I'll have the full interview in video format too out on YouTube at some point soon. So.
Awesome.
I'll send you all of that. I'm happy to. So.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I know the listeners are going to be definitely looking forward to that. And Going with that theme. So let's talk about, you switch from a music minor to music major. What I was curious about, you studied with Greg Banaszak because he was on faculty, but I was reading in your bio that you studied not just jazz, but you studied 20th century classical music too.
Oh, with Greg. Yeah, with Greg. That was my focus with Greg. I've had a weird roundabout way of going at this.
Okay.
I have, yeah, but I think the schooling was focused primarily, my degree's in classical music, my focus primarily on the Glazunov concerto and the Baer concerto and all of that. That was what I did. Yeah, and jazz was my main focus on the side. It's what I loved, but I couldn't get a degree in it there, and it's where I was. So I was in the jazz ensembles and studied with Chaz Baker there, but they didn't have a jazz degree at that time. They do now. Kent has changed. They have seen the error of their ways, and they now offer a jazz degree, but they did not when I was there. So, but I still had jazz improv courses and the jazz ensemble I did religiously while I was there. So, did you mostly play alto? Because I did. In the jazz ensembles, I played all tenor, and for my saxophone, basically pedagogy stuff was all alto. So I played alto, and I haven't touched an alto in years now. I don't even own one. So I have been meaning to buy one. And I just haven't. I haven't had need for it. I play tenor almost all the time now. So.
I think, and it's funny because when I was in New York, I played equal amounts of time on alto and tenor when I was playing with a variety of groups. And then I moved out here, but more people want me on tenor. And it has to do with like the styles of music, I think, that you play. And tenor's just more of a ballsy kind of instrument. It's more out there, whatever. But it was funny because when I was reading your bio, I was thinking, I wonder if he was playing classical tenor because there's not much there for that.
I was in the wind ensemble at Kent, which was their top symphonic band. And there was only 4 saxophones in that band. And I was the tenor chair, and I was for all the years I was in it. So I did play classical tenor saxophone, but it just I don't really understand class. I was there by default because I auditioned as one of the top 2 or 3, and the other guys can only play alto really. So the director always gave me the tenor chair, and I never really liked it. I also don't know that I ever found a classical tenor voice. I think that I had a really nice alto classical sound. And I had a really good jazz tenor sound, but I don't think I ever really found my classical tenor voice. I never found it. I don't think it was ever really there or in me. I don't also think I ever cared to.
There you go. That's right.
If I had sat with it for a while, but I really didn't. So
you didn't envision it.
No, I did not envision it. No, that is correct.
For sure. And the thing is too, having Greg as a teacher classically too, so you had a solid foundation. What was it like studying with him?
He was just pretty chill, to be honest. I will say that the one thing that I learned from Greg more than anything else was how to produce sound and how to make this. I remember fully the one very eye-opening lesson that I had with him, like my sophomore year or something, because coming into high school, I couldn't read music hardly at all. I was not a very good reader. I played all by ear. Everything I did was by ear. And I remember playing in marching band in high school. My senior year, I think I was the top chair, but I did everything by ear, absolutely everything. I could barely read. I mean, like a little bit. I was not good, but all the marching band parts, I just played by ear. I'd listen to other people play, and then I would just play it. So that part came pretty easy, but nobody ever taught me like embouchure or anything in high school. So I did all the stuff you're not supposed to do that they yell at you for, like you're moving your embouchure all over the place, like getting, trying to tense up when you go high and trying to whoa, the low notes and all that. I was doing all that. It was all wrong. And I remember Craig was like, here's what I want you to do. He's like, I want you to blow middle C. and I want you to close your eyes and take your hands off the saxophone. And so he came around behind me and he put his hands on the saxophone, and I'm my eyes closed. I don't know what he's doing. I'm just blowing full force, air this way, not moving my embouchure, don't know what he's going to do. And he starts playing like Charlie Parker licks all the way down the bottom of the horn, all the way up to the top of the horn. And it all came out beautifully. And he was like, that's how it's supposed to be. He's like, you're not supposed to move your mouth around. It's like you solid embouchure. And it changed everything for me at that point.
Wow.
So over the course of the next few months, my embouchure completely changed and I stopped doing all that stuff. And it was the beginning. That was just the beginning. You know, and that was probably like my sophomore year at college or so. So, and that's generally true for saxophone players out there. Don't move your embouchure around. You don't need to. They're little things, you know. And there's nuanced things you can do when you start to develop, and all this is there. But and then altissimo, when you get real high, you do need to move just a little bit. It's helpful to watch John Coltrane and Michael Brecker. Michael Brecker's embouchure is great, and to watch. And there's all that great video, and people will zoom in on his mouth to watch what he does and what his jaw does and where his teeth are. Is very informative, and you'll watch him when he goes up at the altissimo register. It does need to change just a little bit, but not big time, just a little bit. So to get that stuff to come out right, you know.
That's a great tip. Wow, that must have felt. I can't even imagine what you were thinking as all these bebop lines are coming out, and you're like, "Whoa!"
It's like, I can't play that. What? Yeah. And then there's technique stuff that was really good with Greg. And I wish that, you know, Greg was such a short time. We stayed in touch, though. You know, that was just like 4 years. And I feel like even since college, I've grown so much I've even grown so much over the last couple of years as an instrumentalist. So it just, again, don't limit yourself. Just keep expanding thinking, you know, and yeah, so that's what you should do for everybody out there. Just keep expanding and thinking and growing, and don't limit yourself.
Well, what's interesting too, okay, so let's go off of this theme as well, because you don't just play saxophones. You also founded the Cleveland, the Cleveland Time. Actually, no, that's your album, Cleveland Time.
Yeah. No, the records called Cleveland Time Records. I called the record. I don't know. It just seemed like the right name for the.
I think it's brilliant.
Record. Yeah, I don't know. And that's still a work in progress, you know. But I think I'm glad that I did that. So it doesn't make any money, at least not yet. You know, it's really just my brainchild. But I envision so much for it, and I'm going to keep doing all these jazz education things that I'm doing, and I want that to kind of be the main thing behind the Cleveland Time label. Release things. I've got a pool of guys that I use for everything, and you're going to see more stuff coming out. Like even in February, Brian Woods, my piano player, I've got a release from him coming out. And so I'm going to start releasing more things from different people that they're mostly like constituents of mine, like, you know, friends, kind of, you know, musicians are. That's another funny point. I had this with somebody else. Like musicians, like your musicians, like aren't. You can have friends who are musicians, right? I mean, good friends. I have a couple. Brian, my piano player, is a very good friend. But a lot of the guys that I play with aren't friends, but they're more than coworkers, right? Like you musicians you play with, it's like they're a step above like a coworker, but maybe a notch below true friend. I don't know. I was trying to think about that the other day, and I couldn't come up with a good explanation. But it is kind of funny how we define that.
Well, because of the way we communicate, you know, it's not just words.
Yeah, it's kind of personal. The communication between and the camaraderie between is different, I think. But good, you know. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I don't talk to those people like until we meet at a rehearsal or like, hey, can you make this recording session? And I don't talk to them at all. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting though. But you know, the thing is that you have these conversations, and it may have been months or even a year since the last time you spoke. But it's still fine. You know, it's not not like a bad
Oh,
thing.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Unless you played a wrong note, and then no, they're not going to talk to you again. That's a joke. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, let's talk though about the record label. So, like right now,
Yeah.
it's basically for the most part started.
Mhm.
And so you've got your own release, which we're going to talk about in a minute. You're going to have a release on there coming up in February. So you're thinking about a jazz ed focus for this. And where are you thinking of? Like, are you thinking of promoting your works through the area high schools, the area colleges, that kind of thing, to trying to pique more interest in jazz?
It's a good idea. Hopefully it grows into that. Right now, it's mostly just online stuff, which, YouTube is such a great resource. So I think I'm going to keep putting. I also am planning Cleveland Jazz documentary, which I want to make.
Oh, cool.
I definitely want to do that, and I already have some things in play there. But I was very ambitiously thinking that was going to be like a 2-year project. That's going to be like a 10-year project. With everything I got going on, it's going to be some time down the road before that really comes to fruition. But I do think it's going to happen, provided I stay here in Cleveland, which I might not. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. A lot of that will depend on my wife too. So the cool thing with music is you can make it anywhere. And so we'll see how that plays out. I do think we'll probably stay here, but it remains to be seen. So I don't know.
Yeah. But it's funny. I'm just thinking off the top of my head too, you had that, and I keep going back to this, but you had that one interaction, well, a number of interactions with that kid, Chris, in high school, and he opened your eyes, and I could just see you having this label opening up other kids' eyes like your eyes were opened. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I hope so. That would be nice. I would like that.
Yeah, I think that would be really, really cool, for sure. But now let's get to your release, your album release, so also called Cleveland Time as well. And Blues from McCoy, we were talking about that before, and that's been, I think, a semifinalist for an international songwriting competition.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I was happy. That's one of those things you submit for, and you don't hear anything for like months and months and months and months. And one day they're like, oh yeah, you're semifinalist. Oh, that's pretty cool. Thanks. Appreciate that. It didn't go any further than that, but hey, whatever. That was cool. I really like that composition. Oh, and funny story about that. I wrote that in college, or the chords. So it's a very open, totally open minor thing, so it's in a blues 12-bar blues form, but chords only shift like a tiny little bit, like a note each way. Now it does go to the 4 chord and the 2 chord and the 5 chord, but they're so open, and Brian's using McCoy Tyner chordal voicings on a lot of that. And so it leads kind of open sound, but that I all wrote in college. But the ostinato part, that I just wrote like just a couple months before the album was recorded. So I knew it needed something else, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And it was like, wait a minute, what about this? It worked. So
okay, because I'm just writing this down because the thing is that it has elements of it's not like a swing, type of blues. It's more like you're putting in elements of funk and contemporary jazz in there. Yeah. Sure.
I wanted it. Yeah, I think it turned out just the way I wanted it. I think it's almost like it was my sort of homage to McCoy Tyner and John Coltrane meets with a little bit of kind of funk. Yeah, you're right. But then my bass player is more of a funk bass player. So I think a different bass player would have taken it more jazz. I didn't tell him to play the ostinato throughout that piece. I actually wanted him to walk during the solos, but he didn't.
Oh,
he
interesting.
Didn't. And I only wanted the ostinato in the segues between the solos, and then obviously during the head. But and I during some other live versions of this song, Jared doesn't always play bass with me. Sometimes Miguel Torres does, another young great bass player, and he comes a little bit more from a more true jazz background, but they still have that strong Jaco influence. So
That's what I was hearing.
yeah. So in any event, so sometimes live it does tend to. That's the fun thing about that song. Live, you never know what's going to happen. Like it just goes. Anybody, I give everybody free reign. Like guys, just do whatever. Let's just go with it. Make something different every time. So that's fun.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the YouTube version that I saw, and you know what? I just want to make a note to myself. I'm going to put the YouTube link for the live version in the show notes. I thought it was really cool. And the bass player, when he starts his solo, he's off in the upper register and he's got all these sound effects, these pedal effects and all that kind of thing. Then when he drops in the low register, you know, more traditional bass register and stuff like that. I mean, you could definitely tell he's got a funk background for sure.
Yeah, he does. He definitely does. Jazz fusion funk, you know.
Fusion. Yeah. That's for sure. And my thought when I heard your solo, I'm thinking, okay, John Coltrane influence for sure.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, that song absolutely. When I play traditional jazz, I definitely draw from a John Coltrane spot. That just makes sense to me. Like up here, it just makes sense to me. And I have listened to a lot of John Coltrane. There's no doubt. So yeah, that's probably why.
Here's the interesting question. So, you know, your first listen to jazz with Charlie Parker. Then when did you start getting influenced by John Coltrane?
Oh yeah. So yeah, that was an evolution. I think Charlie Parker was the first thing that caught my attention. And I'm trying to think what tune it was. It was one of his really burn-in recordings, like one of the 330. And I'm just like, this doesn't even sound like music. What the hell is this? Like, I mean, it was just like, wow, you know, I've never heard anything like this ever. And there was that. And then I got really into big band and swing and like Duke Ellington. And my saxophone hero in college was Coleman Hawkins. I loved Coleman Hawkins. And I played different back then. I think the basis for my sound was what it is, kind of like bigger. I had read a quote once. I forget who it was, but when it comes to tenor players, either you're a Coleman Hawkins or you're a Lester Young. I don't know if you've heard that before. Like either you come from that very in your face, full bodied thing, or you come from that more airy, sophisticated, you know, subdued kind of playing, right? Like Stan Getz and I was always Coleman Hawkins, always. That's just I'm tone. That's what I go for. And my favorite players are like that usually. So that's what I listened to. Coleman Hawkins. I listened to Coleman Hawkins all the time in college, and then. I mean, sure, I knew Miles and Coltrane, and I dove into that, but I don't think I really understood it. I will tell a funny story. So I am I allowed to not be completely G-rated on this? Is that okay?
It's fine.
So I had this really funny moment in my dorm room this was my freshman year. This was my freshman year. Okay. Yeah, some of this, you know, I haven't thought about all this in a long time, but I got really, really stoned, really stoned. And we were sitting in the dorm room with my roommate. He was not a musician at all. And I put on Giant Steps in headphones. And it was like, you know, the volume all the way up. And I just sat there like completely out of it and was like transfixed by this recording and how intense he is for the entire duration of the recording, just sound and like in your face the entire time. And the way the rhythm section is, like everybody on that recording is just so like, you know, and it was the first time since I probably heard Coltrane that I started to understand it. I actually understood what he was doing. It made sense in that moment, and it still does. And maybe that is when I started to like John Coltrane, I guess. It was a few years before I really listened to him all the time, but I can remember that moment really changed my understanding of what that music was supposed to be, I think.
So you had to be stoned to, no, I'm not saying
I
that.
don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't condone that to anyone out there. And I don't anymore. I can't, you know what? I can't because I get very strong anxiety. So I can't. For any listeners out there, I sometimes I wish I still could, but I can't. So yeah, I don't know if it definitely helped the level of understanding at that moment. I don't need it anymore, but at the time it definitely helped.
It heightened it for sure. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah. And then after that, at some point after college, and I want to say within a couple of years after college, my saxophone hero emerged. And I can't, I'm sure every other guest says this, but Michael Brecker. Michael Brecker was my shining beacon of saxophone and still is. I listen to Michael Brecker pretty much every day and always will. And I was lucky enough to see him in New York City in 2001, long before I even knew who he was. My mom bought tickets when we were in town to go see him and Herbie Hancock and Roy Hargrove in their Directions tour in like 2001 or two. And boy, that was Carnegie Hall. It was awesome. And I got to meet him, and super, super nice person. Same thing with Herbie Hancock, super, super nice person. But yeah, Michael Brecker, I may not sound like him, but when I pick up the horn, that's what I'm envisioning in my head. Whether or not I get there, I don't know, maybe not, but that's what I want to sound like. And that to me is the sort of pinnacle of tenor playing. And I'm sure there's somebody out there. Chris Potter is really, really good, today. It's a very similar kind of approach in a lot of ways, actually. But that's another thing, going back to our don't limit yourself. I think advice to especially younger players, like, don't be limited by the people around you. And not just their opinion. I don't mean their opinions, although that too, but their sounds and the way they play. There's a lot of local players, and I'm not pointing this at any person or entity here in the area or anywhere else. I just mean, you'll find local people who are good or not bad or whatever, or do their own thing or whatever, but don't look to them to be your example of what you should play like or sound like. Look to the best, and always look to the best. And like, you can figure that out for yourself. Listen to anyone and everyone. And, but then figure out who that is, or there's lots of great players, but and look to them for an example of what you should do, not necessarily what you're surrounded by, because that gives you something to shoot for, something to aim for, right? So
that's like the saying, you are the sum total of the people that you hang out with, the people that you associate with. It's the same thing with music. And the thing is, with music, what we have is this advantage of YouTube or Spotify or, Pandora, whatever you listen to. So you could always have that influence. And, it's funny, like my teachers way back, the influence would have been albums or cassettes or CDs. Yeah. You always have that influence. And it's just a question of, not everybody's going to have their own shining hero, or the same shining hero, excuse me. Some people don't like Coltrane or don't like Charlie Parker, but, they're more into rock, so they'll love Clarence Clements. Or, what I'm saying? So they'll have their own influences when it comes to that. And that is perfectly fine. Yeah, you want to be guided by that.
Yeah. And also say, you can learn something from everybody. Some people, unfortunately, it's what not to do, but you shouldn't tell them that. That's mean. But I just mean, I think I think some people limit themselves just by limiting other people. Like you should always look around and listen and like absorb, because there's something to be learned from everybody.
Yeah, and let me ask you this question. So you talked about how Michael Brecker's shining hero, all that kind of thing, and he's what you envision. All right, so talk about then your practicing. How do you approach your practicing with regard to you know, I don't want to say reaching that, that vision or so to speak. Oh, maybe I
Yeah.
will. Yeah. So
That's a pretty difficult, going to be a tough one to reach. Maybe one day I'll be like about 80, maybe. And, I'll be ready to die. And then when that happens, but, yeah, so, yeah, practicing. I wish I had more time. I'll put it like that.
yeah.
I'm so busy. Greg told me, you don't listen to your teachers, right? You can't listen to your teachers. That's not, that's a joke. So yeah, Greg told me in college, he's like, better practice now because you're not going to have time when you get out of here. And he's like, oh, damn, you're right, man. I do wish I had known that. But
Yeah.
so the cool thing is, like you said, practicing is easier now. There's all these cool, nifty iReal Pro on my phone is super handy, and YouTube videos. Oh, I don't know how to play that. Oh, I'll find a YouTube video to show me how to do it, right? Sure.
Yeah.
So it's easy. Kids have it easy now. Kids out there, you guys got it easy, just so you know. But use your resources. I get about 45 to an hour a day. Is about what I'm doing now. I wish that it was more. I think that I would achieve real growth if I could put into 3 to 4 hours, I think, for an extended period of time, because there's some holes that I want to address just up here that I know I need to. But right now, so what I've been working on lately is I pick a couple of things that I want to focus on for a few weeks. And then I move on to the next thing. Right now it's rhythm changes. I'm working on rhythm changes hardcore right now. And all 12 keys, in first starting with roots, thirds, fifths, sevenths, ninths, various arpeggiated versions, scales over it. Then
I see. Okay.
maybe trying to stick to ideas that are just the ninth and the seventh of each chord, 9/7, 9/7, 9/7, stuff like that. And just testing yourself, like, okay, and doing the same thing for a couple of days on the same key, and then maybe 10 minutes of that, and then you change it drastically, like either the half step up or a tritone apart. You really, really shift your mind and make it think about it in a different way. So that's what I've been working on. Last month was blues. I dove into the blues really hardcore for the month, and it worked. I even after all these years, a month on the blues, an hour a day, along with other stuff that I had to learn for actual performances and stuff.
Okay.
There's that.
Yeah.
The stuff I actually have to play. Oh yeah, right. So there was actual growth even after all these years. I know at the end of that month, I really felt like I was a stronger blues player than I was the month prior. Yeah, stuff like that. And then, so some significant area of focus for like a half hour of that time. A 10-minute warm up, just playing whatever the hell I feel like, and capturing your sound, making sure that the reed is good, and just playing. And then depends on what I got going on that week and what performances there are. So if it's stuff with my band, I know all that material, I'll brush up on it right before we play. Or if it's somebody else that I don't know any of that material, that might be 20, 30 minutes out of each day, So yeah, so that, and that's the other thing about getting older is I already know how to play the instrument. So now it's just learning everybody's songs. And then you get a phone call, like, I'll give you $200 to play the show. And you're like, yeah, but I got to learn all this material, man.
I know.
A lot of work. Yeah. So it's like, do I really want to do that? I don't know. It's like, yeah, it seems like a cool gig, I guess. Sure. Okay, I'll do it. But yeah. I
go through the same thought process, especially I do a lot of private gigs and
yeah.
And I give my set list, and then all of a sudden the requests come, and it's for things that are in different languages and cultures, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, I got to make sure I get the backing track. Hold on.
Yeah, right.
And it's a lot more work than you could imagine or whatever. But that was really helpful, though, what you shared, and I like the fact that Love how you said significant focus. So you had a significant focus on rhythm changes, first getting in, yeah, it's more of a brush up in terms of all 12 keys, but what you were doing was expanding how you approached it. So instead of just doing the 1, 3, 5, 7, you're thinking, let me catch some of these extensions, at least,
Sure.
sevenths, ninths, 11ths, 13ths, possibly.
Sure.
And then you mentioned going outside a little bit, a half step. Maybe at certain spots going up a half step, and then sometimes maybe doing a tritone substitution. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, and it's all about, boy, you know what? When you guys, if you check out the Jill Lovano interview, he talks about, it's all about, I can't say it nearly as cool as he can. That man just has a way of like speaking. He is just a profound human being. I mean, everything he says is just, I don't know. It was an intense interview. It was great, but he says it's all about developing your ideas, is what he says. It's all about developing your ideas and then dealing. I've watched the interview so many times, so I'm transcribing, and then dealing in different tempos, and you got to be able to do it in all 12. Like that's how he says, and he's absolutely right. I mean, he would know, but yeah, and it's. I find myself going down the YouTube rabbit hole sometimes with some very interesting saxophone characters that are talking in some very interesting dialects and saying some crazy stuff that I sit and I'll try to take in what they're telling me. And it's all information. It's good stuff. But you can only have so much time and you can't learn every concept, right? So I kind of break it back to Chaz Baker, my jazz band director at Kent State. He, great dude. He was the jazz band director there for a long, long time, now retired. And he would say, can you survive the gig? Can you make it? Can you get through it? Yes. Okay, then you did your job, right? So it comes down to that, like, can you survive or not? And that's, everything else is just, more info. But so it just expand what you're thinking and expand your ideas and grow and try to be a better version of you like tomorrow than you were today. So
let me ask you something about expanding your ideas. Was there ever a time, or, in terms of your approach to improvisation, do you do a lot of transcribing? And if so, like, I'm going to assume here and there.
Yeah. Well, okay. I shouldn't say that. I transcribe all the time, but not always with like, not always like, okay, here's this solo that I love, and I'm going to learn it point A to point B. Like I'm going to learn the whole thing from when he starts to where he stops to where he stops. And I have learned solos like that. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
and you don't always get that much information out of it. It does train your ears, which is great. But I transcribe all the time, but it's not always like, I love Michael Brecker's solo on this song, and I'm going to learn it note for note from start to finish. That has happened, although not with Brecker, I don't think. I got really into his original strap hanging solo, which is that is a wicked hard learn. My goodness. I'm trying to think if I could still play it all the way through. It's been a minute. I don't know, maybe. But so yeah, that's yeah, that one took me a minute. So yeah, there have been a couple where I have really dove into it, and we're talking. Well, that was like a months and months and months long project to learn that. I mean, that was intense. But you don't have to do that, and even Brecker didn't do that. He says in the interviews, he's like, I learned pieces and parts here and there. But transcribing all the time, mainly because that's how I learn most of my material. Most people don't give you charts, at least not. I prefer not anyway. I mean, I can read charts, but it's not. I'd much rather learn the music up here through my ears and then come to the gig and play it without music. I would rather do it that way.
Okay. Do you yeah, I know for me, I'll learn some stuff by ear, although I was a good reader, so I was like classically trained and stuff like that. So,
nice.
Yeah, but you know what? I would have rather been the other way because it's better to train your ears. You could easily train your eyes after that, for sure. But I would learn something by ear, and then I would chart it out in terms of like the form and the chords, and if there were certain, lines that needed to happen or whatever. But that's what Fourscore app on the iPad.
Oh, for sure.
It's all
Fourscore
about.
is great. I use that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, especially with playing with different bands and stuff like that, where, you're doing like this one style, this band one style, this band another style, this band this,
Oh,
private gigs
yeah.
that, all that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
And you can house it all in there without having, I remember the one gig I did, just a cover band that had like 3-part horns.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they had, they did 4-hour shows all the time, and they had a book like this
Oh,
big.
break stands.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You can't find a stand big enough to hold this thing. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But man, Fourscore, and all of those charts are still in my Fourscore app, and I haven't played with them in probably 3 years or something. But their main saxophone player is a friend of mine, and he still will call me every once in a while, like, "Are you available for this date?" I'm like, "I can do that." But the cool thing is they're all still there. So all those charts that I used years ago, there's still just a little tiny, file on that iPad that I can access anytime. So it's great technology.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And when you say, okay, so like you mentioned Michael Brecker,
Mhm.
transcribing bits and pieces here and there and stuff, you're
Yeah.
learning it by ear. Do you ever write it down or you just keep it up here?
No, I haven't written any of that stuff down since
Got it.
college. They made me do it. They
Oh,
did.
oh,
They made
okay.
me in college. Even classical courses, they made you transcribe stuff, just classical pieces, but they made me transcribe lines and write down what I was hearing on paper. But I haven't
That's
done that
good.
since then. Yeah, no, it's great practice, but I had to think how I don't even know how good I've been at this point. I need practice probably. I
It,
know that's a
it,
skill in and of itself.
right. No, no, for sure. And if you haven't done something in a while, absolutely. But I'm reacting to the fact that, I went to Queens College School, Aaron Copland School of
Mhm.
Music at Queens College. We
Nice.
never transcribed any classical stuff.
Oh, really?
Never. Oh my
Yeah.
God, no. It
Yeah,
was
we had to
very,
do that. Yeah.
that's great. That's
Just
really
here and
important.
there. I remember a couple of courses, a couple of our, I think theory courses maybe do that. A couple of real cool professors I had. Yeah. So,
It's
yeah.
practical. I mean, and again, the thing is that, yeah, you could transcribe solos that you like. And,
Mhm.
like when people are first starting out in terms of transcription, like I'll always recommend the 50s rock solos, on
Oh,
saxophone,
yeah.
50s,
Yeah. Yeah. That
60s.
are one simple, like one note lick kind of stuff. Yeah. Those is great stuff. Some of those are great solos too.
Oh, for sure. Rhythmically, and
Hmm.
style wise and whatever. Um,
David Fathead Newman. That's what
oh,
what David Sanborn transcribed him a bunch. He's talked about that. He was a
yeah.
hero of his. Yeah.
Yeah, oh gosh, yeah, no, absolutely, and I just think it's definitely a good skill to have for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was just curious to see if you did. Well, here's the next question too. Some people transcribe, they find really cool licks, they learn them in 12 keys, and then they
Mhm.
try to push them into their solos. Were you ever encouraged to do that at any point?
No. No, I forced myself to do it, but it was all on my own accord. No, I, no, I had probably just because my degree was in classical music. So if I had gone for jazz study, I'm sure somebody would maybe do that at some point. Um, but because my main focus was classical, I didn't have to. Yeah, and then when I do transcribe stuff, um, okay, well no, that's not true. I change keys a lot, but I do it with more melodic content usually. So like if there's um, a good melody that I like, I'll just play it in a lot of different keys. Why not? Solos, I don't usually do that, but well, I did it with Urgent, so
Yeah.
yeah, I did. I can. I don't know. I don't know. I probably should do that more. Maybe I'll put that in the list. I'll transcribe the solo and then I'll change the key. So
A significant focus month.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It could be. Yeah, it definitely help you see the keys more uniformly, maybe because they don't all look the same, right? In your head, they don't in mine anymore.
Yeah, and it's not even a question of looking the same. It's each key has its own character to it,
Yeah.
its own
hmm
timbre, of course, and that kind
Oh
of
yeah,
thing.
sure.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I just realized this. So you've had, training from classical instructors, so to speak, although Greg can do both. So, okay, a couple of things are coming out. First of all, Greg's an amazing player, right? So
hmm
he uses the same embouchure setup, so to speak, for classical and jazz. I'm not talking mouthpiece setup, I'm talking embouchure setup. A lot of people that have trained classically don't.
hmm
It's really different, and there's people that get angry and all this other kind of stuff. Schools of thought and that kind of thing, whatever. But did you ever, aside from Greg, study with a jazz teacher in sax?
Um, no, not formally. Mm-mm. Um, I did. I went to the Inside Outside retreat a couple of years,
Oh, right. Saw
which
that in
was
your
really
bio.
cool. Yeah, that was pretty cool. And Bob Reynolds was there, and Bob Franceschini. That's how I met Bob Franceschini, and then Joshua Redman came, and Chris Potter came, and Jeff Coffin. Jeff
Oh,
Coffin
yeah.
was there. Oof, you know. Uh, yeah, and Kurt Whalen. Kurt Whalen was there. That's right. And so I get to spend some time with them in fairly intimate settings, and particularly Bob Reynolds and Bob Franceschini. I got to do a number of classes with, and so a little bit. Um, but most of what I learned from playing the saxophone on jazz has come from what I've heard and what I've watched. Um, yeah. hmm
That's
Yeah.
really cool. And I think again, it's inspiring to a lot of people because it's a lot different than when we grew up. We're a little bit different generations here, but
hmm
we were trained in school to play the instrument, whereas there's a lot of people that are not trained in school to play, let's say, saxophone, right? And so they're
hmm
learning on their own. They may not have access to a teacher, so they're learning from YouTube University, so to speak. But it's encouraging in the sense that you can, you don't necessarily have to read music. I think it's an important skill to have at some point, but
hmm
you can learn music, by ear, and you can learn it from recordings. And,
hmm
I do think that people should start off with somebody just to get the embouchure, because I
Oh,
know that
sure.
that helped you, for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Some basic technique stuff. You got to get on the right path, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because YouTube's not going to help you with that. It really won't. It really does not.
No, no, it's not. And I mean, yeah, you need some, especially to get started, I think. And it's wise. I mean, it's wise to always be learning from someone. I think it is. I don't know. I'm busy. So,
Well, no, but like you said before, right? When you
yeah.
said we were talking about, it's who you hang around with,
hmm
some of your peers and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It goes along the same thing. You said you want to listen to the best. You have to listen to a
hmm
lot of people to find the best for what you like to do, but
Yeah.
you also want to study with the best, I think, in the beginning, so that you have a solid foundation, and then you could develop from there. Just like this whole
hmm
time that we've been talking, that's one of the main things that I found, from
hmm
you. That's what you've done.
Yeah. That's kind of how it looks up here, anyway, to me. One comment you made about music, reading music. I did read that Joshua Redman said that he didn't, when he was coming into the scene as one of the top tenor players, he couldn't read music at all. He couldn't read music at all. He said that he has since learned, but he couldn't read, and he got his start. I mean, he was good beforehand, I'm sure, by normal human saxophone standards, but he got his start playing with his dad, Dewey,
Right.
going on tour with him. And he talked about it when he was at the Inside Outside retreat. The fact that his dad just kicked his butt, on tour, that was a huge learning thing. But at that time, he could not read. He was entirely a ear hearing player, oral. And I think that's what jazz is all about. You can write charts down, and it's helpful. Big bands, you kind of need charts, and if you're in a setting where people have specific parts they want you to play and they don't have rehearsal time, well, then charts are necessary. And um, you know, it's a skill that you should have as a musician to read. I mean, you got to learn at least in some capacity, but the actual heart of what jazz is, and hell, pop music, you don't need to be able to read in pop music at all. I mean, it's almost, if you're dependent on sheet music and pop music, it's a hindrance, right? So, for any type of popular music, I think, and I include jazz in that, it's art music, it's pop art, I don't know, but yeah, that you have to be able to play by ear. You have to. It's, to me, that's the number one skill. If you're going to play that style of music, classical music's different, but
Yeah, I think if you're part of a horn section, I mean, I know Bob Reynolds does this all the time, where that horn section, they learn all their stuff by ear or whatever. But I know for a lot of people, if they're in horn sections, usually, and everybody's subbing, if you want to be a sub, you've got to read, because
for sure, yeah,
yeah,
and it's a skill you have to have. I mean, but it's not the heart of the music.
No, it's just an assist. It's just
right.
something that's going to help you. I know I've subbed in a lot of bands too. But then on the same token, like, I'm just remembering some of the bands I've subbed with. Here's the songs we do. Here are the YouTube links. Go learn it. But I was the only horn, and in some ways I prefer that, actually, because I like doing my own thing. But,
yeah, I do too. Horn parts can be limiting. Horn sections can be limiting. They can be fun, but they can also be limiting. So
yeah, I like to be a free spirit.
Yeah,
when
me
it comes
too.
to that stuff.
I like doing my own thing. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and actually, to bring up another interesting point, in Joe Lovano's interview, he talks about Michael Brecker, and he talks about the fact that when they did the saxophone summit, they had a hard time mixing the sound because of the fact that all three of them used different approaches on the microphone itself. And he's like, he kind of laughed about it, but he said Mike was right up on the microphone like the whole time. And Dave Liebman was like all over the place with the soprano going all over the place. And like they couldn't mix it because his sound was in and out of the mix. And then Joe was a little bit backed up a little bit and so the sounds were all like totally different. And they had it was a pain in the butt to mix, I guess. But he made the comment that Mike did that because he was predominantly a solo saxophonist. He didn't play with horn sections a lot. He did with his brother, right? But he developed this rock approach to recording on saxophone, which is solo saxophone, like right up on the mic, like hot, like that sound. So yeah, microphone technique, that's a big one, but yeah, and so that's a thing, and I prefer to be alone, I think, but horn sections are fun too.
Well, let me ask you this question. I like being on a wireless mic. I'm one of those people that kind of move a little bit, but when you're playing in a horn section, I mean, if everybody's on a wireless mic, that's great. But if some people are not, that also, just like you just spoke about, the mic technique, that's going to be really, really important. When you played in horn sections, do you play wireless mic? I think you do. Remic or something is.
Yeah, I do. The Remic, I got an endorsement from them a couple of years ago, and they got me. They have really cool microphones, by the way. Are you familiar with them at all?
No, I use the AMT Quantum Mini.
That's a great microphone. And I played a Shure for years, and so how do I describe this thing? So it's I wish I should have brought it, but it's like this little. It's just a rubber thing, and the microphone is built into it, and it just clips right under the bell. Oh, it's super cool. But when I first got that microphone, it was wired, so it had a hard wire that would, you had to be tethered, and I hated that. I was like, guys, you got to get me a wireless version of this thing. So I did eventually get one, but they don't make the belt pack component. I actually use my Shure belt pack. And their microphone just is a jack that goes into that. So I'm using the actual wireless system that is Shure, but the microphone itself is the Remic thing. And that's what I've been using. And it's a very neat and tidy microphone. It's a very unique. I think tonal quality might be better on the AMT. I don't know. They're both good. But yeah, I am very used to a wireless, long story short.
So if you were in a horn section, you'd still be wireless.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I don't
got
man, you're stuck on that. You can't move around. You're stuck right on that one thing.
I know.
You can't go, like, I don't know. So yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't go back to if I have a say so. I don't always have a say so, but.
That is true. That is definitely true for sure. When it comes to that, yeah, for myself, when I've played in horn sections, no, I've just trying to remember. Yeah, at the time I was on an AMT WI5, I think it was, or something like that. Again, that was a great mic. The newer AMTs are even better. They're much better. I do like them. I know there's a lot of wireless mics that are coming out that are cheaper that people are trying out. They're testing out. You see these on YouTube, and they're very interesting. They're very interesting for sure. But yeah, I was curious about that Remick mic.
Yeah, it's cool. It's very different, and they made their claim to fame is really through making microphones for string, like acoustic string instruments.
Okay, got it.
Some of my bass player friends, like upright bass players, Remix are like the creme de la creme of like, acoustic microphones, and they were trying to expand their horizon. They made these fairly new on the market for horn players, and so I think that's why saxophone players aren't as familiar with them. But they're neat. They're neat. It's neat technology and very unlike any other microphone out there. So
cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna change the subject just for a little bit. First of all, I appreciate your time. So any upcoming projects, right? You do have you're putting on your label in February. The guitar player, I think you mentioned his album coming out.
Piano player,
the
Brian
piano
Woods,
player.
and it's just a single. I have a couple of singles coming out with him. We are planning his actual album, but that's not a thing yet. Not yet. But it's just a single. My Funny Valentine. We're doing a rendition on that.
Oh, cool. All right. And what other upcoming projects do you have? Now we're approaching 2023. Can you believe this?
Yeah. I have another album dropping in like 2 weeks.
Cool.
It's so Tom Bones Malone from the Blues Brothers Band, and his resume is just absolutely unreal. Are you familiar with him? Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a saxophone player too, although his main instrument is trombone, but he plays like, I think he told me 17 instruments. He plays a lot of stuff, and he made his career on that. But he's on the Cleveland Time album, but he recorded remotely for that. So he just recorded in his home studio and Dropbox tracks to my engineer. But he, after that came out, and it was so cool having him on there and everything, that I'm like, hey Tom, like, you're in New Jersey, and actually he's out by you now. He's in LA now, but he moved. But at the time, he still lived in New Jersey, and he'd lived in New Jersey for a long time. And I'm like, Tom, it's such a short drive or even a plane flight to Cleveland. Like, why don't you come and play with us? And he was like, I like that idea. Let's do that. So he came out and he performed with us at the Bop Stop in February, this past February. And it was a small miracle that he got here, because there was the storm of the century. That was, I don't know if you heard about the huge storm that happened on the East Coast back in February, but that was right when his plane was. He was the very last plane that made it into Cleveland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was a small miracle he got here, but he did, and I had it recorded, and there's video. I have videos that have been coming out too on YouTube from that performance, but I made a live album, and that's supposed to come out on December 2nd.
Okay, great. What's the title?
Live at the Bop Stop.
Got it. Okay, great. Awesome. What we'll do, we'll put the links.
I like that. It's very different from the studio album. It was stuff tailored for him. I picked a couple of Blues Brothers tunes. I picked some of the more soul, jazz, standard kind of stuff, just something that I knew that, because we had no rehearsal. So the stuff that I knew that the band would sound good on, that we could put together with him, with like 30 minutes that we had before we played,
Wow.
that we would sound good on. And sure enough, it worked. I think the results are pretty good. So the band sounds pretty good.
Oh, that's really cool. That's awesome. Like I said, I'm going to, yeah, we'll definitely want to put the links in the show notes for this for sure.
Sure.
Now let us all know, how can people find you online?
Yeah. We said Facebook. I'm on Facebook. The band is on Facebook. And that was, I don't know why I did that. In retrospect, I kind of wish I hadn't done that. I've got 2 business Facebook accounts. I've got Matthew Alec Music, and I have the Soul Electric. I don't know why I did that. I wish if I had known, hindsight was 2020, I would have just done the Matthew Alec Music page and not bothered with the Soul Electric, because it's just a lot of the same content going out there, and I'm like, but now I feel obligated. It's got like 9,000 followers now, so I feel obligated to maintain it. I'm like, I wish that maybe at some point Facebook will have a merge feature where I can merge pages. It's just a lot of work to maintain like all these different freaking pages. So
Yeah.
But in any event, yeah. So there's the Facebook/the Soul Electric, Facebook.com/Matthew Alec Music, Instagram Matthew Alec Music. Twitter, Matthew Alec Jazz, and MatthewAlec.com. And then all the Cleveland Time stuff. There's all those things too.
Oh my gosh.
ClevelandTime.org. We'll just say that. And that website needs some updating. At some point, I want to do a kind of a fresh facelift to that and put a whole bunch of jazz education features and stuff on it. That's the plan. But maybe in 2023, I'll make that a priority and try to get that done.
And that's a great way to close us out, because it's again going back to, how you, just from perchance, meeting somebody in high school band and them exposing you. And then that's a great vehicle, aside from the record label, but now also having the website, and that's something to promote to local area schools, and not even just local area. Of course, it can expand out, but you start locally and promote the website. And this is what the record label does. And here's some, historical. My gosh, you put the Joe Lovano interview on there. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks. That's sort of what I'm thinking. And then maybe have some. I do daily jazz factoids and jazz birthday stuff on the Cleveland Times social media pages, which is also time consuming. But I do that, and that gets a lot of really good response. A lot of engagement from a lot of jazz fans out there. So I don't know, but I want to expand on that and keep going with that. So yeah, that's the plan.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you, Matthew, so much for your time, your generous amount of time, and shared so many great things. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's very nice meeting you.